Hi people, it's me Anja, my pronouns are she and her, and welcome back to my channel for another recent reads video. The first book on this list is called The Blood Cradle. For those who don't know, this book is a YA fantasy, and it's the conclusion to the Prison Hero trilogy. And I really enjoyed the first two books in this trilogy, but I didn't really like this book as much, and I was kind of thinking that this book would be like that. I rated it 3 stars, because frankly the second book in this trilogy wasn't as good as the first book, and I loved the first book literally so much. I rated it 4.5 stars. It was one of my almost favorites of 2021, because that book was literally so immersive, and it surprised me so much, but this book didn't. First of all, the storylines that I was really enjoying from the first book concluded exactly the way that I thought they would in this book, and the new storylines that the author introduced, I wasn't interested in literally at all. You know what I mean? So I wasn't really as interested in the characters or in the plot anymore, even though the plot was still like fast-paced and the world building was like interesting and magical and immersive, or at least had the potential to be immersive. I personally just didn't care as much as I like used to anymore. And I don't know why, but anyway, that's what happened when I read this book, and frankly I did want to DNF it at times, but there were a few storylines that I was still interested in. You know, I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but basically I rated this book 3 stars. I'm now way more hesitant about supporting this author in the future whenever she writes new books, and I don't exactly recommend this book, even though the series itself started off very strong. It didn't really end quite the same way. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 3 stars, and take that as you will. The next book on this list is called The Science of Being Angry. This book is a middle-grade sapphic contemporary that follows a young sapphic main character who tries to find out if her anger issues are genetic. This book was absolutely so good, and I'm so glad that it lived up to my expectations. For those who don't know, this book was on my May TBR, because the author's previous book, How to Become a Planet, was so good last year. So naturally I had very high expectations for this book, and I'm so glad that it lived up to those expectations, because frankly, the books that I've been putting on like my most recent monthly TBRs, my April, May, and June TBRs, some of them have not been living up to my expectations. Like, for example, the Blood Cradle. So anyway, I digress. The point is, this book was so good. First of all, the characters were so well developed and so distinct, and I was so attached to all of them. I felt the main characters' like frustrations and everything. Like, this book was so good, and I loved her family relationships, like her relationships with her mom, her relationships with her like her brothers, and everything. Like, this book was so good. The friendships were so lovely and so wonderful. The sapphic representation was so great. The plot was so intriguing. This book is absolutely so good, and by far, so far, this book is my favorite middle-grade book by this author, and this book definitely exceeds my expectations for the author's next book, which I believe comes out in early 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, this book was so good, and I rated it 4 stars, and with that, I would highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Onyeka in the Academy of the Sun. I apologize if I mispronounced her name. Please tell me if I did and how to pronounce it correctly, because I don't ever like mispronounce things on purpose. But anyway, this book is a middle-grade fantasy that follows a young British Nigerian main character who discovers that her hair has magical powers, which honestly, I wish my hair had magical powers. That would be so cool. But anyway, this book was so good, and I really enjoyed it. I rated this book 4 stars because, first of all, the world building was absolutely so inventive, it was so immersive, and so innovative. Like, it was so cool and so intriguing. Second of all, the plot was so intriguing, and it was absolutely so interesting. Third of all, the characters were so well developed and so distinct, and the found family like theme in this book was so good because the friendships were so well developed and absolutely so lovely. I'm so excited to continue the series and read the sequels because this book was so good. It was absolutely so awesome. I want to go to the Academy of the Sun. Even if I wasn't magical, I just want to see it all and meet all of these characters. This author is literally so talented, and this book was so good. Anyway, with all that said, I rated this book 4 stars, and I would highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called The Edge of Summer. This book is a YA contemporary following a young main character who's navigating first love and loss. This book is so good. I had really low expectations for this book before reading it, and honestly, I don't remember why, but I enjoyed this book much more than I was expecting to, because I rated it 4 stars because it was so good. First of all, the writing really hooked me in. Second of all, the story itself was so lyrical, and it was absolutely so pretty. Third of all, the romance was so well developed, and it was absolutely so great. The characters were so well developed and so distinct. The friendships were so lovely and so wonderful. The family dynamics were so great. This book is really good. It reminded me of like The Year After You and other like grief-driven stories like that. You know what I mean? Like, this book is so good, and now I'm more intrigued to check out the author's previous book, because the author, if I'm not mistaken, debuted with a different book last year that has like a historical fiction layer to it. So anyway, I'm excited to read that. I'll probably talk about it in my next recent reads video. But anyway, with all that said, this book was so good, and it was really, really awesome and really lyrical. So with all that said, I rated it 4 stars like I mentioned, and I would highly, highly recommend it. The last book on this list is called This Place is Still Beautiful. This book is a YA contemporary following a pair of Chinese sisters after a racist incident happens at their home, and basically they both react to it very, very differently. Honestly, I rated this book 3 stars. Even though the concept and the subject matter is very, very important and timely and everything, like, the execution, frankly, for me, didn't really live up to that, and I didn't really enjoy this book as much as I was really hoping to, because first of all, I thought that there would be more closure between the 2 main characters at the end than there actually was. And like, the 2 sisters are so vastly different from each other. Like, they're both very authentic main characters, don't get me wrong, but they're so vastly different from each other, and I think that's why maybe there's no closure, like real closure between the 2 of them towards the second half of the book. Second of all, their side romantic storylines I didn't care for, like, at all. Third of all, the plot itself was very intriguing, and the writing is like so lyrical, and it was so beautiful, but I didn't really like fall in love with the story. I wasn't like as immersed into the story as I was really hoping I would be, because I felt like the author could have unpacked so much more stuff than she did. Like, she introduced so many like interesting, nuanced storylines, and I felt like she could have like unpacked and addressed more of it, and she didn't. So anyway, overall, I rated this book 3 stars because most of it felt very like underdeveloped, and the stuff that was like more developed, I wasn't really like interested in. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, so take that as you will. So, in conclusion, I would highly recommend the 3 4-star books on this list: Onyeka and the Academy of the Sun, The Edge of Summer and the Science of Being Angry, and then I wouldn't recommend the other 2 books. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up, comment down below the cow emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!